There you go. Um, and it will be made available to everyone by tomorrow. Also, please keep the link handy in the, I'll be putting a link in the chat. That'll be handy since this link will bring you to all of the Q&As with our candidates across the candidate slate. Voting begins on June 15th, it'll end on July 15th. And also please note that you can only submit a ballot once and your vote will be anonymous. You must be an active NYLA member in order to vote in this election. So if you have any questions about voting, please email membership@nyla.org. So just so you know the framework of the forum, we'll start with brief introductions and statements from both our candidates. Then we'll move into our general Q&A, and then we'll take the live questions, starting with those that were submitted via the registration form. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our lovely candidates, starting with Arlene.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Arlene LaVerde. I am the school librarian at Townsend Harris High School in Queens, New York. I am also an adjunct lecturer at Queens College Graduate School for Library Studies. I have been a New York City educator for the last 30 years. I can't believe how quickly time flies. And I have been a school librarian for the last 15 years. I know if you've read my candidate statement online, you will probably have, some of this is going to sound familiar to you. I came into education not necessarily by accident. I've always wanted to be a teacher, but I came into librarianship very much accidentally. When I was a classroom teacher, I had approached my principal asking to be put in an out of classroom position. If you've ever been a classroom teacher, after 16 years in that role, it gets a little bit frustrating, I guess is the best word. As much as I loved being a classroom teacher, I also was a little bit burnt out. And my principal said, I have the perfect role for you. And I was like, okay, what is it that you think I would be perfect at? She's like, the school librarian is retiring. And I think that you would be a great fit for the library. And I kind of looked at her and said, I think you're wrong. I think you're very wrong. I don't want to be the school librarian. I wanted to be the computer teacher. And she's like, give it a shot. The library has everything that you're passionate about. It has books, it has tech, it has kids, it has all of these great things. And reluctantly, I walked into that elementary school library in September of 2004. And I never really looked back. I want to say that my first year as an elementary school librarian, I was fabulous, because who doesn't want to say that? And that would be a big fat lie. I was absolutely horrendous. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going, but I was very grateful for the support system that New York City School Library Services gave me. And I did know one thing, that I was not doing a good job that first year, but I knew I had the potential to do a great job. And I knew that it had the possibilities were endless in a school library. And I, at 36 years old, turned around and told my husband that I was going back to graduate school and I was going to get my MLS and I was going to be a school librarian. And with his support and the support of my two young elementary school age children, I did just that. Now, if you would have told me back then that I would be here now running for NYLA president, I would have laughed, because I'm not usually that person that gets involved in organizations. But in the last 5 years, I've realized that if I want libraries to be around for my grandchildren and their children and just children in general, they need to have a voice. And I have a big mouth and a big voice, and I'm not afraid to speaking up and fighting for what I believe is right. And that's why I'm here running for the NYLA presidency. And with that said, I want to also state that my candidate, Maureen, and I, we're friends, and I respect her immensely. So I know that either of us will do the job that needs to get done, and just want you to know that you would be in good hands regardless. And I want to thank you for your time and for your energy for being here. And I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Arlene. Maureen, go ahead. Your turn.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Good afternoon. In 2009, I was a school media student at the iSchool at Syracuse University, and I was looking for a student teaching placement. The same name was suggested to me by several people. Marianne Carr, an elementary librarian in Binghamton City Schools. Marianne graciously agreed to mentor me through my student teaching, and it was through this that she introduced me to the New York Library Association. As a naive but enthusiastic library student, I thought all librarians joined their professional association and also became active and contributing members. In the years since that first exposure to NYLA, I have come across so many library leaders, many of whom I see on this Zoom call today, who have shared their time, their talents, their knowledge, and their experience with me and with so many others. To even be considered as a candidate for NYLA president is a professional and personal honor, and I thank the many leaders on whose shoulders I would stand. I especially thank Dr. Jen Cannell, who maybe sees something in me that I have not seen in myself before this. I thank my administration and colleagues at Schodack Central School District, especially my partner in crime, Stacy Ratner, for their encouragement and support. Thank you to my family, my husband and my 3 kids who have supported me through library school, through job searches, through all my NYLA adventures and conferences. They've supported me unconditionally. And thank you to you, Arlene, who also stepped up to run. I count you as one of the leaders that I'm so lucky to work with, and I thank you for also stepping up. As someone who has been a lifelong New York Library patron and also a 10-year plus library professional, I pledge to be the best NYLA president that I can be. I promise to represent all members of the library community in New York, from Montauk to Fredonia, from Binghamton to Malone, and all points in between. Thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thank you all so much. Those are both lovely statements. All right, awesome. Okay, so we're going to move into our general Q&A. These were pre-prepared questions from NYLA. And then right after this section, we'll move into your live questions. So our first question is, what do you see as NYLA's most important responsibility to New York's library community? And we'll start with Arlene.
So the most important part of NYLA's responsibility, it's like a threefold because it's all interconnected. Right? I've been a NYLA member. I'm not Maureen. I did not join NYLA when I first entered the profession. I honestly didn't realize how I should be involved in a professional organization. I joined NYLA pretty late, but when I did join NYLA, I jumped feet first into being involved. And I became a member of NYLA Sizzle and a board member and so on. I think one of the most important things about that NYLA has to take into consideration is advocacy, communication, transparency, and education, right? And in regards to that, is like, I get the NYLA emails, but in all honesty and seriousness, emails get lost in the inbox. When you are, especially now in this pandemic age that we're living in, our emails get inundated. And as much as I would love to peruse a NYLA email, I've got 57 emails from students, 3 or 4 dozen emails from admin, and I just don't have the time. And I feel that we have to have a better way of communicating with our members about what things are happening in NYLA, because many of the members that I know and speak to, and many of future members that I try to recruit into NYLA, is that they're always asking, what is NYLA doing for the profession? What is NYLA doing for me? And they are doing so many things behind the scenes. It's imperative that we get that information out to our membership. But another thing that I feel that is so important for NYLA to do is educating the public about exactly what librarians do, right? If you speak to a non-librarian and ask them, or better yet, tell them you are a librarian or you are studying to be a librarian, the first question I've always received was, you need a master's degree for that? And 100% transparency on my part. When I first became a librarian, when my principal put me in the library, I had no idea that a master's degree was required. I had no idea what the profession entailed. And it is so important that we let people know that there's two stereotype librarians out there. It's the shusher Madam Pins from Harry Potter, or excuse me for saying, it's the guy porn star who wants the librarian and the secret kind of thing going on. And that's not what we are. We all librarians, from school librarians to public librarians, academic librarians, we're educators, and we are information specialists. And we are not shushers, and the library is not a place to be quiet, and it's a place for the community. It's a place for everyone. And we need to make sure that the public and our patrons know this, because as a school librarian, I know that my patrons are going to be academic patrons in their future, and they are already public librarians, public library patrons. And it's so important for the community to understand how vital libraries are. And I feel like who better than to educate the public than the organization NYLA, right? We need to stop preaching to ourselves, to other librarians, and we need to stop telling each other how important we are, because in reality, we all know how important we are. We need to tell the people how important we are.
Thank you so much. Maureen, same question.
So I think NYLA's most important responsibilities can be found in the mission statement. NYLA is here to lead, to educate, and to advocate on behalf of New York's library community, but also to advance New York's library community. So that gets back to what Arlene was speaking of. We need to advance our mission. NYLA needs to speak out on library related issues, and there's many of them. In the past few years, I think, have underscored the need for information evaluation and disinformation, and trying to make sure we have an information literate society with the media that exists today, not 20 years ago. So I think that's really important. NYLA needs to advocate not just for the status quo, but how can we move forward? Continuing to provide the education resources, not just to the general public, but how can our members also advocate on our behalf, and to give all the members the tools to really promote the library community and our mission that we have to our patrons, our students, and the community at large.
Thank you. So we're going to move into our next question, and I'll have Maureen start us off this time. What do you feel is our biggest challenge as we move into the post-pandemic world?
So first off, I want to acknowledge that librarians and libraries have done an amazing job in the past 16 months of transitioning to a COVID existence. So whether that's virtual reference appointments at the academic level, it's curbside pickup in public libraries, it's librarians on a cart because libraries are being used as classroom space. We made that transition, we made it really quickly, and I think libraries have continued to serve so many people. So, you know, we really as a community, a professional community, have done a great job. I think the most important thing that needs to drive all our decisions is safety. The safety of library workers, the safety of library patrons, and the safety of our communities at large. So advocating for things like construction aid to make sure that there's proper ventilation, advocating for you know, personal protective equipment if that's necessary, again, advocating for things like that. It's going to require creativity. At this point, when we think of when school librarians, we've been sitting down and planning things, most of us don't know what school's going to look like in September. We're hoping we're in person. We're not 100% sure. Today, June 1st, was the deadline the Division of Library Development set for public libraries to reopen. So we have libraries that are reopening, which is a hopeful sign, but what does that look like? What does the programming look like? Libraries aren't really conducive to social distancing, so it's really forcing us to reimagine kind of our whole model. The Next thing I'll say is that I think it's really important, and I think this is a role that NYLA can fill in a special way. It's really important to not only deal with the conditions on the ground as they are now, as they might be in September or even December, but to plan for the next thing, the next pandemic, which could happen at any time. We don't know, none of us were expecting this a year and a half ago. So what could happen next? And NYLA could be the organization that across different library types could help provide the resources to plan for that next eventuality, that our services could be disrupted like they were in March of 2020.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Arlene, same question.
There are so many things that I can speak to in regards to post-pandemic world. I agree with Maureen 100% that we have to take into consideration our librarians and our library staff, workers, and their safety, right? 100% agree with Maureen in regards to the fact that librarians, when the pandemic struck and pretty much the world shut down, librarians didn't shut down. The communication amongst librarians was amazing, and the platforms that they used in order to communicate with each other and share information and best practices gave me hope as a librarian, as a school librarian, just as a person. Right? In my personal school library community, we shared an amazing amount of resources overnight on a listserv. And then in the public librarian world and in the academic librarian world, social media exploded. And here's how we can help each other. And here's how we can support each other. And safety is definitely one of the priorities, but some of the other priorities that NYLA really needs to look at in this post-pandemic world is people's social and emotional health and their social emotional welfare. With the fact that this post-pandemic world, we're now seeing people being vaccinated, which is wonderful. But now we have these high anxiety levels, me included, in regarding to going into public spaces. And it's like, how are we treating our people, our community, our workers? How are we supporting their anxiety in going into a space? And some people are wearing masks, some people are not. It's really, really scary. It's a really scary situation in that regard. But another really important thing that we need to keep in mind through NYLA is systemic racism and how we approach different people and BIPOC people in our communities, in our libraries, right? You see our profession, and I love my profession. I love being a librarian, but every conference that I go to, I look around the room and I've honestly, ooh, I can count how many Hispanic women are in this conference. I can count how many African-American women are in this conference. I can count how many African-American and Hispanic men are in this conference. And then it's a sea of white men and women. And no disrespect to my white men and women, but I feel like as a professional organization, we need to also figure out a way to bring other people in, to get other people involved, to get other people into our profession so that people do see themselves not only on the books on the shelves in the library, but in the librarians talking to them about the books, right? I feel like there's so many things that we need to work on. And I do feel like they all revolve around these core issues, making people feel included, making people feel safe, and taking care of their emotional and social needs. Because like Maureen also said, library programming is not, conducive to social distancing, but we can kind of make it work. Like one of the things I will say that one good thing that came out of this pandemic world that we live in is Zoom, right? Is the fact that we have learned that we can be inclusive of everyone throughout this vast New York state. And we can learn from each other from here in New York City, which is such a different place than the rest of New York state. And it's so imperative that everyone sees that we all have something good to contribute to the table.
Thank you so much. And Arlene, I'm gonna turn this next question over to you because you kind of started going into it a little bit. How do you see libraries moving forward or staying vital in the next decade and beyond?
I lost the mute button, sorry.
It's all good.
Libraries are always going to be vital, right? I have been a school librarian, and I've been a librarian since 2006 when I graduated from Queens College with my MLS. And I remember going into Queens College Library Media Program, and people like, why are you doing this? You know, libraries are going to be obsolete. There's the Google, you know, everybody has the Google. And there are ebooks, so why do we need libraries? Because there are ebooks, and library is more than books. And that's the message that needs to be given to our communities, that libraries are more than books. Libraries are never going to be obsolete. We've learned just in this last year alone how vital information literacy is in our schools, in our public libraries, in our academic libraries, how easily people are misled by clickbait articles and people don't understand how to read and discern information. And that's our job as librarians. Our job as librarians is to make sure that our patrons are given the best information sources and understand how to navigate what is the Google, right? As a school librarian, I tell my students all the time, I use Google all of the time. I use Wikipedia all of the time. The difference between the way I use it and you use it is that I'm a little bit more discerning in the information, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. And we need to teach our children first and foremost, and we need to educate their parents and the adults and we need to educate the educated, right? Because on my personal Facebook feed, I cannot tell you how many times one of my friends shared an article that I'm like, do you realize that this is not correct? Do you realize that there are some inaccuracies here? Libraries are vital for an intelligent, educated community, right? To have the capability of being information literate, have the understanding of being a good digital citizen, right? There's so many facets of all of it that while people are saying, oh, this, the library profession is dying, they are absolutely and incompletely incorrect.
Thank you. Maureen, same question.
First off, I just have to say I agree. My head was shaking with so much that Arlene said. So, she really nailed a lot of points that I think are very important. The roadmap for libraries exists already. And if you take a look at the Sustainable Libraries Initiative that's NYLA is a sponsor of, that really discusses how libraries can be vibrant organizations well into the future. The three things that underpin the Sustainable Libraries Initiative are economic health of an organization, environmental practices, and social equity. And if a library can incorporate those into their plan of service and meet the needs of their community while doing that, I think that the library, individual libraries as an organization should be healthy. Because each one of those pieces, economic health obviously is a concern every year. Every year we do advocacy for budget for both programming and for construction. The social equity piece, if you look at the headlines over the last however many years, and if you look at the social justice movements that have really come to the forefront in the past several years, that is an important part. And like Arlene said, it's not enough to just have books on your bookshelf. We have to recruit people into the profession. I was chuckling because if you go to a school library conference, the differences are even starker. If you have to go to the bathroom at a school library conference, you will wait in line at the women's room for a long time. And we need to get more, people involved in the profession from all different walks of life. So, you know, the Sustainable Libraries Initiative is really exciting to me. The first school librarian was just certified through that within the last few months. Several public libraries have been certified, and I think that that really serves as kind of a framework for the future of libraries. And if, you know, these trailblazers have kind of led us, and hopefully more of us can follow their footsteps.
Thank you so much, Maureen. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to have Maureen start off this time. So what do you think is the most valuable thing NYLA could do in support of school librarians, and how would you address that?
So I am appreciative of all that NYLA has been doing for school librarians. Through our legislative efforts, they have been advocating for certified school librarians in every school, including elementary, where they are currently not mandated. So those efforts have been ongoing. So far, they have not been successful, but you know, NYLA is fighting the good fight for us. I'm really encouraged that there is a bill in assembly right now. It's in committee that discusses media literacy instruction, and NYLA is working to put school librarians at the forefront of the people who would deliver that instruction in schools. So that's an exciting initiative. I think, you know, if I were to be president, even if I'm not, I think one of the things I would like to see NYLA and CISL do is to get in front of other stakeholders other than our legislators. We need to get in front of school leaders. School leaders hold the purse strings. They give out budget resources, and that's always a struggle to try to get your library adequately funded. They also determine staffing levels. And so if we can get in front of school leaders, various organizations, the principals group, NISCUS, the Council of School Superintendents, I think that would go a long way into letting them know what we do, because honestly, a lot of administrators don't know what school librarians do. A lot of educators don't know what school librarians do. And then I think the School Board Association, the New York State School Board Association, are other stakeholders that we need to get in front of as a group. I know other professional groups do that. I know the Music Teachers Association and some other groups have a presence at New York State School Boards Association. And that would be my commitment to make sure that NYLA and CISL are in the faces of those people, so that they see us and they learn what we do and what we can offer to our students.
Thank you so much. Arlene, same question.
School libraries, like Maureen, is a huge passion of mine as a school librarian. I think that NYLA has worked hard on school librarian issues, but I am also, I feel like there could be so much more done. And advocacy in regards to school librarianship is imperative, and education in school librarians is imperative. Like Maureen said, a lot of people don't know what we do. A lot of people think school librarians are all about shushing and reading books. They don't understand the intricacies of our job. 90% of the time, if a school has a library with a librarian, it's usually one person, and the solo librarian, no one knows. A school librarian is like an island in a school. No one knows what you do. No one knows the ins and outs of your job. And it's imperative that NYLA starts educating people about what school librarians do and how important our jobs in the school community is. But I also believe that there are so many ways to leverage that, right? One thing that I don't think NYLA does enough of is using social media as a tool to get the word out. Unfortunately, we do live in this social media world. When I say unfortunately, everything is in 168 characters on Twitter or less. I think it's 168. And since I sometimes tend to be a little long-winded, I kind of run out of characters and have to be more concise, which is kind of good. But we really need to take advantage of those platforms. We need to take, this is where the public is. This is where the people are. We need to start getting that message out there in those 168 characters daily and multiple times a day. We need to get in contact with administrators and those other stakeholders, but more importantly for school libraries, we really need to get the ear of our parents. When our parents speak, when our parents yell, when our parents demand, that's when we see action, right? I've said it in earlier about we need to stop talking to ourselves because it is an echo chamber. We start talking to, we go to these library conferences and we're like, do you realize how important our job is? And we're like, yeah, we know this. We're speaking to each other. It's like speaking to the choir in a church. We need to start speaking to people outside of our profession. We need to be the presenters at the National Teachers Council of English. We need to be the presenters at the math conferences. We need to be the presenters at the social studies conferences as school librarians to tell them, this is what we can do for you. This is what we can do for your students. We are all working together to build a better place. We also need to build relationships, really strong relationships with our college libraries and our public libraries, because our students are the future researchers in those college libraries. They need to know that they can go to the academic librarian for help, and that academic librarian, this is what they're going to do. We need to build those relationships so that we could turn around and ask the academic librarians, what should my kids need? What do my kids need in order to be successful in your school? Come into my school, high school library and talk to my students about what they're going to experience on the academic side. Because as a high school librarian, and I've talked to other academic librarians, as a high school librarian, I kind of tend to baby my students because, they're 17. They're still kids to me. But once they leave the high school, they need to understand that the academic world is really, really different than the high school world. And that they also need to know that they can go to the public library for their other needs, that we all work together. And what I can offer them in a school library, the public can offer them, and that I am preparing future college patrons and future special library patrons in my school libraries. Another thing that I really feel is so important that NYLA really needs to scream about is the imperative need for elementary school librarians. As a high school librarian, one of my biggest challenges is unteaching the bad habits that our elementary school students get. We teach children, and I'm saying this as a we, because I was an elementary school teacher for 16 years before becoming a high school librarian. But as a teacher, I taught children how to plagiarize, like legit taught them how to plagiarize, because as a homework assignment, it's answer these questions from the textbook. And when they copied the answer straight from the textbook, I would give them a straight check plus because you got the right answer. As a classroom teacher, it would have taken me 10 seconds to teach them, put the page number, the beginnings of a citation. These are things that I have to now unteach my high school students because it's been ingrained in them in elementary school. Things that go to Google and do a Google search, type in the question, and it's ingrained in them that they don't understand why it doesn't work in a database search. So we really need, if there's anything that I believe that NYLA needs to push, is the need for elementary school librarians, because we are more than just books. We are education. We are digital citizenship. We need to teach our kids to be safe in this digital world that we live in. And how many kids do so many things that are so digitally dangerous. And these are red flags rising, and how we can help in regards to their safety, their education, and their future.
Thank you both so much. So these are all of the NYLA prepared questions. We have a good amount of live Q&A ones, so I want to give enough time for that. But I'm going to let you both get like a drink of water quickly. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we jump right back in. So for everyone who's been here so far, we're going to do our live Q&A section now. we have a few questions that were pre-submitted through the registration form, and then I've been keeping track of those that were in the chat. As they're answering these questions, feel free to put more in the chat. We want this to be a conversation, and I will be keeping track of the chat as time goes on. I'm also gonna dump in a few links that I shared before, but they are very important. So the first link is you can learn about all the candidates using the first one and watch all the other candidates Q&As. The second link is just how you can vote in the upcoming election. And then the third is just the email if you have any questions about the NYLA council election whatsoever. So let's jump into the live Q&A. So our first question that was pre-submitted is, how do your personal values align with the mission and values of NYLA? And let's start with Maureen.
Thank you for that question. You know, as I think back, even though I've only been a librarian for about 12 years, I can't remember a time when my story didn't include libraries. I grew up right across the street from your home public library in Johnson City. And I think one of the proudest moments, and I can still remember it, I can still smell that building, was getting my library card when I could walk to the library by myself and check out books. It was like life-changing. I spent many an hour as a commuter student to Binghamton University at Bartle Library in between classes. And my husband and I, we've moved around many different places, several towns in New York State. And one of the first things I did was take my kids to the public library. So I don't know a time when my personal story didn't include libraries. I came to the profession late, and I probably should have come to it, you know, way earlier than I did. And so I'm trying to make up for lost time for that, I guess. But one of the values that I believe in personally and professionally is the open and free access and equitable access to information. I think that should be, it's an underpinning of my personal beliefs, and it's reflected in how I teach and how I act as a librarian. So, so I think that's really important. I think diversity is something that I really strive for in my personal life, and diversity in my professional life has made, you know, even in the 12 or so years since I've been in library school and been a librarian, it's changed so much. The stories, you know, literature itself has gone from having diverse characters to being written by diverse authors, and all of these changes enrich our society, enrich our conversation, and enrich us as individuals. So, you know, I think NYLA's mission, you know, I'm a lifelong learner. I want to, you know, spread those kinds of ideals to as many people as I can.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Arlene, same question.
So NYLA's mission is to lead, educate, and advocate for the advancement of the NYLA community. I have been an educator for the last 30 years of my life. So I feel like that in and of itself tells you about me. I've been an educator in the New York City public school systems. I was an educator in the CCD programs that my children attended. I'm an educator in Queens College. Education is huge in my life and a huge priority. So with that, I'm just going to leave that. But then it comes to lead and advocate. I have always been a person who sits back for a little while and gets a feel of the situation. I try to read a room before I speak out. I try to figure out what's going on in the world around me. But with that said, I am not afraid of advocating and speaking up on behalf of the things that I feel and believe I'm very passionate about. It could be advocating for my own personal reasons, or I could be advocating on the behalf of my children or my students. but libraries is something that my passion has. I want to say that if you know who I am, and if you've ever seen me, you know that advocating for school libraries in the last 3 years has become a huge part of my life. I am not afraid to talk to people. I'm not afraid to ask the hard questions. I'm not afraid to call people out in regards to the things that need to be done, the things that need to be said. I never really thought of myself as a leader, right? I always thought of myself as a person who, while I'm not afraid to speak up, calling me a leader, I don't know about that. It was kind of maybe. But then I've had a couple of friends approach me about becoming the New York City School Librarian Association president. And that happened in 2019. A friend approached me and says, hey, do you think you'd like to do this? And I was like, well, I don't know what does this mean? What does this entail? Before I join up for anything or before I volunteer to do something, tell me what I'm signing myself over for. And they're like, oh, it's about promoting school libraries, this, that, and the other thing. And I was in that instance, I was running unopposed. So it was not a nerve-wracking kind of thing that it's going on here with Maureen, who's my friend. But I did it. And I learned through that presidency of NYSLA that I actually am a leader, that I can rally people around a cause, that I can bring attention and good attention to the things that are important, that I am willing to go and speak to people in charge. I am willing to reach out to these people and let them know that NYSLA was a force to be reckoned with, and they needed to be held accountable for the things that needed to be done. I feel like I have always been a leader, but just didn't know that I was one. When people had things that they wanted to run, issues that they wanted to talk about and how they should handle it, I was one of the people they would approach. And that's really, it's a little scary, but it's also really confidence building that people value my opinion and they value what I have to say, and that I can try and help guide people and an organization into a better world.
Thank you so much. So the second question, and you both kind of touched upon this when we had our general Q&As. I'm gonna tweak it a little bit. So what is an actionable step that you have to making NYLA more inclusive? Oh, sorry, I didn't say who will start. Maureen, you'll start. Took a minute.
Okay, thanks for the question. So in preparing for this, I looked up to see what NYLA actually has in place as far as diversity and inclusion. And I was kind of chagrined to find that there are a couple endorsements where we endorsed ALA statements, but I couldn't find any, NYLA statement or NYLA plan for diversity and inclusion. So I was, that would be my goal, is to get something in writing. What is our goals? What are the goals to include more people in this conversation? And what kind of steps? What is the strategy behind that? I think until we state what our goals are and what our end, what is the end result that we want to have, and who knows, it might not be an end result that it'll be ongoing. I think it should be something that is always ongoing, but without having that strategic plan, and there are many that we can model. ALA has a really good one. There are a bunch of libraries. I was looking at different websites. There are a bunch of good plans in place already. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel, but NYLA as an organization has to state what their intended goal is for diversity and inclusion. I think an essential part of that will be outreach to groups that aren't as represented in NYLA and in our, certain areas of our profession, and but that first step is going to be to define what we mean by diversity and inclusion, and to state what we want to do. If we do in fact have a plan, then we need to put that out there in the public, because I searched on Google, I searched the NYLA website, and I could not find it. So I think we have to start at the beginning and not take baby steps. I think we need to take big giant leaps and get our organization in line with the statements that we've endorsed thus far.
Thank you. Arlene, your turn.
Yep. I agree with Maureen that we have to have goals. You can't meet goals if you don't have them, right? If your community, if they don't know what your goals are, they're not going to join your organization. It's like it's a kind of a catch-22. I saw in the chat, one of the questions was about increasing membership. But increasing membership, if I don't know what my organization stands for, why am I going to join? If I don't know what my organization is going to do, why am I going to give them my money? So the first and foremost is to set some goals, right? But it's not only the goal setting, it is okay, we set our goals and now we have to do our goals. We have to commit to our goals. We have to create plans for our goals. So we're talking about diversity and inclusion, and that has so many different facets, right? So diversity and inclusion in the profession. As librarians, we need to recruit people to become librarians, right? One of the things working on the Queens College side of librarianship and being one of the teachers in the Queens College Library program is that I see how many people apply to be librarians, who apply to our program, wanting to be librarians, whether they're school librarians, whether they're academic librarians, specials, public. We have a pretty decent sized program. And being that we're a city university, we're an affordable program. And because we're in New York City, we're a pretty diverse program. But we really need to work actively harder to recruit more candidates. And that needs to start really young, right? That needs to start in our schools, in our elementary schools, our middle schools, our high schools. We need to be the people in those schools talking about the profession. We need, they have career day fairs, and you see who goes into these fairs. Doctors and lawyers and all of these other professionals. Can we compete with the firemen and their fire truck? Maybe not, but we have other things that we can make this profession exciting. We need to go into our communities of color and let people know that this is a real profession for you. And we need to try and figure out how to take down those barriers that are preventing our people of color from joining the profession. The fact that, it's expensive to get this master's degree. There needs to be some kind of way to make it so that people can afford to become librarians, right? We talk about the diversity and inclusion of our programs, absolutely. The diversity and inclusion of our collection, absolutely. But we really need to talk about the diversity and inclusion of our people. We need to make sure that our librarians are treated well and equally across the board. Unfortunately, I have seen posts on social media where our BIPOC librarians are feeling that they are not being treated the same. And those kinds of issues really need to be addressed. So while we need to have our goals, we need to set our goals about diversity and inclusion. We need to include in those goals educating people about the profession and encouraging them to becoming part of our profession. We need to hear our people about what they're experiencing and how we can make it better for them, right? As a Puerto Rican woman, there are certain things that I feel that need to be changed and included, but I don't know and have all the answers for the other BIPOC people out there, for our LGBTQ librarians, and how they can feel included in this diversity and inclusion kind of world that we're living in.
Thank you. So I'm going to kind of combine two questions here. So Sue asked, how do we break the cycle of I'm not involved in NYLA, so I won't join NYLA or any other organization because I don't join, I don't get involved. How would you shift that idea and have them join NYLA? And let's start with Maureen.
Thanks for the question, Sue. I've been on the membership committee. I've been the membership chair for NYLA CISL for, I think, 7 or 8 years now, maybe longer than that. So I've also been part of NYLA's membership committee, and that's always a challenge. How do we get more membership? Membership is really important. It is the second largest revenue stream for NYLA. And so if membership goes down, then the ability, NYLA's ability to provide all these resources really starts to get limited. So membership is, it's on the forefront of my mind. It's something that I've been discussing within CISL and within NYLA for several years. I think it's really important to show the value of what we offer. I think I know one of the other questions that maybe it didn't get asked, but was on the sheet that we had was how do we include non-members? And I think we should include non-members in as much as we possibly can. NYLA does a lot of work that benefits all librarians and library community, regardless of membership status. So our legislative initiatives, our advocacy initiatives don't distinguish, you know, we want libraries for librarians who are members and not those other people. So I think that a lot of the work we do already can include non-members, but how do we, I would prefer to think of them not as non-members, but as potential members, prospective members, right? How do we get them in? How do we, because when they're not members of NYLA, not only, it's not just membership revenue, but it's their time and talents. It's their presenting at conferences. It's their networking and sharing and making our profession richer. And the best thing about being a member of NYLA is when I go to a NYLA event, whether it's NYLA, whether it's CISL, whether it's NYSLMA, which is our regional school library affiliate, is networking with other librarians of all types. That is when I feel most productive. That is what I have missed the most for the last 14 or 15 months, is those face-to-face interactions with librarians. This Zoom is a great alternative. Don't get me wrong. The technology has really saved us and saved our programming, but we are so much richer with more people. I am more is better when it comes to people kind of person. And so I invite people to become members for so many reasons. But that's a great question. And I don't think there's ever an answer to that question. There might be, you know, steps that we can take, but I don't think that question is ever going to be completely solved and off the table.
Thank you so much. And also thank you for touching upon that other question. I was trying to combine them both, so you did it. Okay, Arlene, your turn.
Membership. There's so many things I could say about membership, and membership costs money, right? That the bottom line is your pocketbook. And we need to let people know what their money is buying for them, right? I feel like NYLA is a really important organization that doesn't let people know what they're doing, right? So I have talked to a variety of librarians here down in the city, and I asked them, you know, are you going to join NYLA? What do you think of NYLA? And either some of them have no idea who NYLA is, and some of them are like, well, why am I going to join NYLA? What are they doing for me? My go-to answer is, and always is it's kind of like being a member. No, it's not kind of like, it's like being a member of a union. Your union is only as strong as its members. And if you choose not to be a part of the team, how can you criticize the team that's trying to do the work for you? NYLA is trying really hard to work on all libraries, public libraries, school libraries, academic libraries, and special libraries, all of them, not just New York City libraries, not just libraries in Albany, libraries across this state, right? So I feel like in order to increase membership, NYLA really needs to increase its voice to the members that they are trying to reach. I know what NYLA is doing. I'm a member of the NYLA Sizzle board. There are some things that NYLA does that I don't necessarily agree with. And let me tell you, NYLA has heard my voice. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I don't know how I feel about this. What are you doing for me? What are you doing for school librarians? We know this is my passion. These are my people. But we as an organization, NYLA desperately needs to be better at communicating, right? They desperately need to be better at being transparent on what they're doing. I remember having a conversation with someone from NYLA about, and I asked straight out, what is it that you're doing for us? And learning about the fact that they are legislators and they're going down and legislating for library. I'm like, but I didn't know that. So how do you expect me to join an organization if I don't know what you're doing? You know, the membership is on a sliding scale. And I have told people, I have said, join at the low rate. See if you think this is working for you. If you think that NYLA is doing a good job, join at the higher rate. If you think that NYLA can do a better job, step up and join the organization. You can start off small. You don't have to, on your first day there, run for NYLA president. You can join a committee. You can send an email. You can say, hey, how can I help? You can get involved in advocacy day. But we need to let our members know and our potential members know that this is our, these are our goals, like the last question. These are our goals. This is what we're doing. This is where your money is going, right? Because if I'm joining NYLA at the $135 rate, while $135 is not like huge amounts of money, it's $135 that I could use to pay something else. What is my $135 going for? We're doing this email campaign. We are giving CTLE credit for this. We are whatever it is that you're doing that I can turn around and see, and it's tangible for me to understand, I can get behind as a member. I can turn around and say, oh, this is where my money is going. My money is going to send this person to Washington, D.C. to lobby for this bill, or this is to pay to go to Albany and tell state education, what are you doing and what is wrong, and this is how we need. But if you don't tell us, then why am I giving you my money? Because I don't see a return. And it really, really has to do with communication and transparency, because it's not like I don't think, or people not necessarily don't think NYLA is doing anything. It's just that the message is kind of getting bogged down in email boxes that are already bogged down.
Thank you so much, Arlene. And thank you also, Maureen, for answering all these questions. In our last 2 minutes, I kind of wanted to give the chance for both of you to say any final comments that you don't feel like you may have already talked about. And I apologize for not getting to all of our questions. We had such great meaty questions, and unfortunately we couldn't get to all of them. But I'm just going to turn over to Maureen for any final statements.
I would just like to thank all the attendees for spending the afternoon with us. It's a beautiful day out, and here in the Capital Region, the Mid-Hudson Valley, it was horrible over the weekend, so it's like seeing the sun for the first time in several days. So thank you for tuning in and being involved in our professional organization. I think we all want NYLA to succeed, and I pledge to do the best job I can to lead NYLA through the challenges, through whatever comes our way, if I was elected president. And if Arlene is elected, I pledge my support to whatever she needs to be successful in her position. I think one of the proudest moments that I've had, other than having my 3 kids and my family, is the day that I graduated with my librarian degree. It was, like I said, it was delayed. And I am so proud to call myself a librarian. And I know one of the questions in there was, do we want to change our job title? I never want to not be known as a librarian. To me, it is the best job going. And despite any daily frustrations that I have, it is still the work that I would choose to do for as long as I can. And if elected to be NYLA president, my promise is to represent NYLA as best I can, using all the resources and all the people that are here to help, and to support Arlene if she is successful. So that's my pledge.
Thank you so much. Arlene.
I want to say, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I'm very humbled to be running for NYLA president. I feel running against or with Maureen, right? Because I don't want to think of it as we're running against each other, because I like she has committed that if I won, she would give me her full support. I would definitely give her my full support also, because this is something that we're passionate about. This is something that is important to us. Overall, I believe that if I'm elected, I would bring my loud voice into NYLA to be heard across the state. New York State, and I didn't say this enough in any of my questions. I talked about the various librarians in librarianship, but I didn't talk about New York State in general. And being from New York City, a lot of people tend to think that we have tunnel vision when it comes to New York, and we see New York as through the eyes of New York City. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of my visions and thinking does come out of New York City, but I do completely understand, just in conversations with NYLA members and NYLA Sizzle members, how different New York State is, right? For New York City, we have some different issues. But in New York State, the library issues are the library issues. The library issues are about our patrons, and it's about equity and access, and it's about our communities and how important libraries are to a thriving community. I gotta speak English. Community, whether it's of community in Albany, a school community, an academic community. Libraries build community, and we need to make sure that those communities get built on strong library foundations. It is an honor to be running for president. If I become I'm tired, guys. If I become NYLA president, I promise to lead with a loud voice. I promise to work with everyone to make sure that we work together to get what we want for our librarians, for our communities, and for our patrons. And if Maureen wins, I promise to support her and be the loud voice that she might need down here. I am not afraid of speaking my mind. I'm not afraid of speaking up for the things that are important.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with everyone today and for running. You both are just such amazing, passionate candidates. So it's an honor just to be here. And thank you everyone for attending. I'm gonna, for the last time, have all these links in the chat. The first one is how to learn about all the candidates and watch all their candidate Q&As. This will be published by tomorrow. The second link is how to vote in the NYLA Council election. And the third is just the email if you have any questions. So thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you have a great day.
Christina, thank you so much for organizing this, and you made the whole process so much easier. I wasn't even totally nervous during the whole thing. So thank you for
I'm
doing
glad.
this. You did a great job.
The nausea passed right away.
Good. I'm going to stop the live stream, and it will stop recording now.